Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Juliet Stevenson and David Bradley. I say, what larks, ladies and gentlemen. I've always envied Roy Plumley and Michael Parkinson and now Kirsty Young to be a sort of host or hostess of Desert Island Disc. And this is the National Theatre's answer to Desert Island Disc. And I suppose the theme was time travelling, really. Juliet and David had just been waxing nostalgic over the Royal Shakespeare Company days they shared together. So we'll mention the RSC kindly and fondly, but it's the National Theatre we're here to talk about, of course. But time travelling is a bit of a, because I know you've just got off the Atlantis Express, Juliet, to Waterloo. We saw your first episode on Saturday night. That's going to be a must-see, I think, for the next 12 weeks or so. Yeah. And David, you're just about, we see you as William Hartnell in Mark Gatiss' film about the very first Doctor Who episode, which I'm afraid to say I remember vividly back in November '63.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So we've been looking back, and actors, sometimes I've got the impression that actors like to look forward rather than back. Has it been a difficult job for you both to think back to your various National Theatre experiences?
In some ways, yeah, because I don't remember what I've seen. I think I do wipe. I do tend to stay very much in the present or look forward, and I certainly don't have an archival memory. And so one of the difficulties and challenges of answering these questions, which was I just don't remember the shows I've seen. And the archive I discovered, there's a fantastic National Theatre archive, for those who don't know. But it's great if you know what you're looking for, but if you don't, if you just want to sort of... So I did find it difficult, because my memories also felt more experiential than sort of archival.
Yes, or sort of chronological.
Well, you have strong memories of moments in productions or on stage or relationships with actors, but I don't always remember dates or titles or, you know. It's a different kind of memory I have. What about you?
Well, I have a better memory, I think, of like the 60s and 70s than yesterday.
Yes, I feel a bit like that myself, David. Now, we're all wearing mics, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, but they are for or rather they're for recording purposes rather than vocal purposes. So if you don't hear any of us, do shout out, we'll all speak up for you. Now, the answers that the actors and guests have been, the questions they've been asked, I should say, begin with beginnings. Where, when, and what was your first encounter with the National Theatre? At the Old Vic or the New Theatre, i.e. the Noel Coward Theatre now, on screen at Chichester, on tour, or on the South Bank? Was it an audition, a meeting, or seeing a show? Juliet.
Well, I think I had two answers, one of which was I was at RADA and I was brought, I think a bunch of us were brought in our first year at RADA to see Peggy Ashcroft doing Happy Days. Anybody remember that? In the Olivier, and I have a feeling it was the first production. It opened the Olivier Theatre, but I might be wrong about that. No, I must have been wrong about that, because that was 1976, I think. And I'm ashamed to say I fell asleep during that, because it wasn't my cup of tea then, although I was a great admirer of her.
Of the Dame Peg.
Yeah, but I had a very scary first encounter inside the building as an actress, because at the end of RADA, I was still at RADA, and done this sort of prize evening where we all had to do auditions, and casting directors came, and the next morning I had a call to say, would you go down and meet Gillian Diamond, who was a sort of legendary casting director for many, many years of the National Theatre. So I was incredibly excited and thought this was it, this was my great break, and my friends were all very kind of jealous, and I came down to this stage door here, and came in and gave my name, shaking, you know, kind of, to be coming into this building, and I sat, and I sat, and I sat, and I sat, and nothing happened, and nobody came, and an hour went past, and I thought, well, this is clearly, you know, I should just probably leave. And then somebody came down and saw me there and asked my name and took me up to the bar, and I sat in the bar with some woman whose name I was never told, and watched all these extraordinarily, intimidatingly famous actors coming in and out. But anyway, Gillian Diamond appeared and looked at me, and obviously had asked for the wrong person. She could see in an instant I knew what had happened, is that there was somebody, she got our names muddled, and she didn't.
Oh, she looked at everybody like that, didn't she?
So I never auditioned, we never talked about anything, and after about an hour I just went to the loo and then slunk out of the building.
Oh dear, what a sad... Did you ever remind Julian of this whenever you meet?
No,
or?
I didn't. She was famous for having one adjective. You were like, one adjective was scrawled across the face of every actor. That was a rumour anyway. You know, like difficult. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
So what was your first experience then, David?
Well, it was in 1964. I was living and working in my hometown of York, and I belonged to a youth group that was run by a guy who would put on all sorts of unheard of Greek tragedies, the odd Shakespeare, and weird plays that none of us quite understood. But he kind of introduced us to them all, and he encouraged us to go down to what was then called the British Drama League. I don't think it exists anymore.
No, I think you're right.
And they were running summer courses in that year in Chichester. So you spent a week down there working with professional directors, designers and writers, and just workshopping various scenes from plays under kind of professional conditions. And I was, 21, 22, and a part of the course was going to see some of the plays, and I'd never seen anything outside my hometown local rep, York Theatre Royal Company. And the first thing I saw was Royal Hunt of the Sun, and it just blew me away, and especially Robert Stevens' performance is magnificent.
Atahualpa.
Atahualpa, the sun god, yeah. And the same week I saw Olivia's Othello, and so it was quite...
My God.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, I mean, famously, John Dexter, he'd read the script, Peter Schaffer's script, and there's a stage direction saying they climb the Andes. And for Dexter, that was the clincher. With any play that had that as a stage direction, he wanted to direct it. And direct it he did. I mean, what was it? Was it Stevens? I mean, Colin Blakely played Pizarro, didn't he?
A
marvellous actor.
Gambon was in there somewhere.
Gambon was in there somewhere too.
He was one of the ones climbing the Andes.
Yes. But what was it about Stevens' performance that sticks in the memory?
Because he seemed so... I'd never seen anybody with that amount of confidence. I won't say arrogance, but the character was arrogant. And I thought, how wonderful to be able to hold a stage in that way. And it was his death scene that got me. He laid on stage, having supposedly been burnt at the stake, and he was just wearing a loincloth and just laid on the centre of the stage in a full spotlight. And for the last 20 minutes of the play, and his diaphragm, there's a diagram, didn't move a muscle. And it was like, and you could feel the audience were all, when's it going to ripple? When's it going to, you know? And it didn't. And
yes.
It was wonderful.
No, a remarkable performance. Wish I'd seen it. I should be saying that throughout the next 3/4 of an hour or so. Anyway, moving on to people, who would you describe as an unsung hero or indeed heroine of the National? On stage, backstage, in an office, or elsewhere? Juliet.
Well, there are so many contenders for unsung heroes in this building, and in theatre generally, I think. I mean, you could talk about stage management, you could talk about, you know, almost everybody who behind the scenes is making something happen, but who never get any fuss made of them. But I decided in the end to plump for dressers, because I had a dresser here, Michelle, almost every time I worked here. And if she never gets any fuss, I'm gonna make a fuss of her tonight.
Right.
Because I think dressers, you know, they're really badly paid. They work very unsociable hours. There's absolutely no chance for them to sort of progress or get promoted or to develop the work. Really, just stops where it is. And yet, there's many, many, many times they are the people who get you through. Or you know, if you're unhappy or nervous or frightened or worried or late, or you know, they're so often the people who they do much, much, much more than dress, and they're very often the sort of the hand you hold through the run of a show, and can be great fun, and so I'd like to sort of sing a paean of praise to dressers, because but I mean, you know, stage. There's a wonderful stage door, Linda here. I don't know if anybody knows her, and I was just talking to who's been here for 38 years. And she started in secretarial services, or sex serve, as she said it was called in those days. And but it's been at the stage door for as long as I can remember. And they're also amazing. Sort of, they're the people who transcend their jobs, I guess.
And now you've chosen somebody who was very much a National Theatre institution, Give us her name and why you feel she was
her name
such an unsung
was
heroine.
Dinah Boddington, and she was like the company stage manager. And she, I mean, I generally thought for a while she was running the place.
So did she.
And she was a mixture of Sergeant Major and your mother. And she if you got the call from Diana on stage now, you put it in.
You didn't hang around.
No. But she was so jolly and warm, and she seemed to go back to Suffolk every night to her family and back again. And she was just so much a part of the fabric of the place. And she would treat us the same way. I mean, she wasn't above giving Olivia bollocking, you know, and for being late for rehearsal or whatever. And well, she wasn't entirely unsung because she got an MBE for her services when she retired. But to me, she's the one that.
But do you remember her broadcasts over the tannoy? Her sort of, it wasn't just, you know, Miss Stevenson, Mr. Bradley, your 5-minute call. She would go into, oh, and by the way, there's a special matinee tomorrow, and don't forget your sandwiches. Make them cheese and tomato rather than meat. You know, they would go on. They would be like sort of Pinteresque monologues.
Yeah.
She would go on for hours on the tannoy. Do you? I don't making this up. Do you remember her doing that?
Yes, no, she was all that.
Bless her.
Yeah.
Now, which individual performance by an actor made a particularly lasting impression on you? A performance you saw or acted with or was in a show you worked on? Juliet.
I can't remember what it was.
Can't remember what it was. Let me look at my...
Warren Mitchell in Death and the Salesman. Death of a Salesman.
The Salesman.
Anybody see that?
Yes. Fantastic.
Yes. Anybody? Yeah. I mean, he was a revelation to me. And I love it when, you know, your expectations of an actor. So I suppose it's never been the great sort of most celebrated, revered actors who've sort of done it for me, to be perfectly honest, sort of fess up to this. So I wasn't a mad fan of Olivier, and is that a terrible thing to say? I mean, I admired them hugely, but very often, from my point of view, it's people who come from slightly left field. Very often somebody's giving the most extraordinary performance in the corner of a production. I mean, I wanted to say, you know, in answer to that, Jenny Galloway and, you know, After the Dance, or Jenny Galloway in almost anything. Yeah. There's very often occasions here where you see remarkable, exquisite performances by people not necessarily carrying the show. But Warren Mitchell in that production, Michael Rudman's production of Death of a Salesman, was really, really revelatory and hugely humane and wonderful, wonderful performance. Who else did I put?
You also put down Henry Goodman in Angels in America.
Yeah, Angels in America. Anybody remember seeing that?
Oh, yeah.
Henry as Roy Cohn was just fantastic. I think it was the first time I really noticed him. And what else? Nicholas
in Michael Rudman again, his production of Pinero as the Magistrate.
Yeah, that was interesting. How many of Michael Rudman's productions I've loved. Anybody remember The Magistrate by Pinero? There was a fantastic production that Michael Rudman did with Alison Fisk, Nicholas Le Prévost, who's always an actor I adore, who were just hilariously funny.
He has a great droll quality, I always think. You kind of, he's sort of laughing away to himself about the world. I don't know, Alison Fisk, I don't know what's happened. I don't seem to have heard her for a long time.
Wonderful actress, I don't know what's happened to her.
And you also mentioned, you're very good, once you get started, Juliet, you also mentioned in Arcadia, you know, which so many performances to pick out there, you've gone for Bill Nye's performance.
Well, I'm a great fan of Bill's, and I watch him, he's like a masterclass. Like, you know, he's just the most amazing actor to watch. And it's just, I have a memory of him taking me through an argument about poverty in that play. There was a central argument. Did you see it, Dave?
No.
Arcadia.
No, I didn't.
Stop us,
There was the most amazing, anybody remember that? A central argument about poverty. And I remember literally being on the edge of my seat. And this was not a thriller, it was a play about ideas. And yet, the way he argued through those ideas, he thinks so, he mints thought, Bill Nye. You cannot see the word on the page. He seems to be really, really thinking fresh and anew every single night. And I remember that argument those were the reasons I made these choices, because I had very strong memories of sitting in the theatre completely compelled by what somebody was doing.
Yes, I'm delighted that Bill's getting all this success in film work, but I think we do need him back on stage, because as you say, for writers who write intelligently, they have no better interpreter than, I think, Bill, as you say,
Yeah.
to handle intellectual ideas. He has, you know, very few peers, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So, David, who was, which actor did you single out?
Well, it's Olivier.
Yes.
And I saw him in Long Day's Journey
Yes,
Tonight,
the O'Neill.
which I absolutely loved. He was doing that while I was with the company, because I joined the company in '72. I auditioned for Trevor over at the Old Witch, and apparently he said to my agent, "That's possibly the worst audition I've ever seen, but I'm prepared to take him on." Players cast,
Yes.
you know, doing the wallpaper, whatever.
All that stuff.
And a week later, I auditioned for Olivier. So it was, I mean, for me, I got the same kind of offer.
Yes.
And so I opted for National. And I think while we were rehearsing, I just arrived. We got tickets to see all the new kids on the block, so to speak, in '72, to see him in Long Day's Journey. And I've just, having seen his Othello, which I was more struck by Frank Finley's underplaying as the Arthur
Right.
at the time.
Interesting.
And there's still something made me a bit squeamish about having a white guy playing Othello. Even then, it's all. But he was very impressive. But I still didn't buy into it emotionally. But I did kind of, as a technical performance, I thought it was
Well, Dennis Quilly, I remember, used to say that he played one of the sons, he and Ronnie Pickup. And
Ronnie Pickup. And Maureen Littman was in there.
Maureen Littman was in there too, right. Apparently, whenever he wasn't on, Olivier, because he was ill and exhausted by running the National, as well as playing this monumental part, he would kind of sit in the wings and conserve his energy, ready to go on to the next kind of mountain to climb.
Was Constance Cummings in there?
She was, that's right.
Yeah.
Do you think there was a bit of James Tyrone in Olivier as an actor?
Yes. Except James Tyrone had completely sold out, hadn't he?
Yes, that's right.
But mainly for me, Olivier's last performance at the Old Vic was in Trevor Griffith's at the Parties. Anybody remember that?
Yes.
And I didn't actually have a part in it. I was a walking understudy for Ronnie Pickup, because Ronnie had this huge, whacking great part. So I would just watch rehearsals and watch him working, and people like Dennis Quilly and Frank Finley or Gillian Barge and some wonderful people in it. And it was quite a provocative play. And he played this old Glaswegian trade unionist. He seemed to have this puce face and was forever mopping his brow. And he had this 20-minute monologue in the middle of it, which was brilliant, watching him rehearse this and figure it out. And I think he made sure he learnt it before he started, because he was terrified of drying up and the audience saying, "Oh, he's losing it, the old man." He was always aware of that. And there was one day where I was called in because Ronnie Pickup might not be able to make it. He was away filming somewhere. So just to make sure, we had a full dress rehearsal on the stage of the Old Vic, and under performance conditions. And Sir Lawrence said, "Do you want me to just top and tail my speech?" Or what? I says, no, I'd like you to do the whole thing, if you don't mind, Sir Lawrence. And I said, "Oh, well, David wants us to do the whole thing." So I spent an afternoon on stage in a leading role with Sir Laurence Olivier in a supporting role. And nobody saw it. But, you know, it was great.
Yes. Well, that's fantastic. Now, your own work, I think, is coming up next as far as the National is concerned. Yes, what's the most fulfilling production you've been part of? Juliet, would you like to share that with us?
Well, that was a tough one, really. Picking one out of, because you feel productions, roles are like friends, and you don't like to pick one over another. And I have really genuinely loved every experience I've had here. But the first one I played, I have a lot of great fondness for, which is the first role I played here was Yerma in Lorca's play, in a wonderful, I thought, production by Di Trevis and the Cottesloe, and fantastic company of women. And it was a remarkable sort of, I'd never read Lorca, never seen it, and it was completely sort of revelation to me, that world. But the thing I think perhaps I was proudest of as a production was I played Grusha in Caucasian Chalk Circle, directed by Simon McBurney with Complicity. It was a co-production between Complicity and the National. And it was in the Olivier, in the Round. That season they changed the Olivier and built it in the Round. Anybody remember that season? Was it? Well, I mean, I thought, and I think we did there was just 2 shows, ours, and then the other one was the Marasade, I think, wasn't it? And I mean, I don't think I've ever been in something where every single night I felt just immensely proud to be part of this company, because I thought it was just an inspirational production by Simon. And we learnt these extraordinary Georgian songs, these 8-part unaccompanied sort of a cappella songs that he'd gone and sort of collected from Georgia with a musicologist, and they were the sort of soundtrack of the evening. Do you remember those? So lots of the rehearsal was spent, you know, doing extraordinarily sophisticated sort of singing work, choral work, but then, I mean, just the thrill of being in that company and it's everything really that I always aspired to, which is to be part of an ensemble which was genuinely working together, not just an ensemble in name, but really. That was my experience. It came really into a reality, into fruition, working with Simon in that company. It was very, very tough, but I thought his production was one of the most remarkable things I'd ever certainly been in and even seen. You know.
Good.
So yeah.
Now you've mentioned 2 productions that you were in, David, that you've got particularly fond memories of.
Yes, and since we, you know, organised this, I've thought of a couple more.
Oh, right, well, feel free.
No, I mean, like you, every time I've been here, I've had a great experience, and I've always loved working here. And productions like the Mistress in 1999, I mean, playing God on a forklift truck with John Tams and his wonderful band, doing Tony Harrison's wonderful translation, and Bill Bryden's production. And because it was a communal thing, you know, the audience were like mingling about, and they parted when we needed to do a scene somewhere, and it was just so fluent, and nobody wanted to go home at the end of it. It was just like, you know, and none of the actors went back to the dressing room in between scenes. We all stayed on the floor. Those great things. And the tour of King Lear and Richard III started off here and went around the world with
So Ian, everyone was
and
Brian Cox.
And Brian Cox and Ian McKellen, and because that was for the company alone, that was just worth it. Just worth a mention.
Yes.
But I have to say, if I had to pick one, it'll be The Homecoming, in '97, because it introduced me in more than one sense to Pinter. I'd never seen any of his plays performed. I'd never performed in any of them, apart from seeing the original production of The Homecoming at the Aldwych over the river in '64. And so when Roger Michel asked me to play Max in that, and on the first read-through, Pinter walked in and sat next to me, which, you know, no pressure. And because and just meeting him, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I used to get these Penguin editions of plays. Wesker, N.F. Simpson, and Ionesco, but it was the Pinter ones that just grabbed me somehow.
Yes.
I just loved the dark humour of them, the fact that what was not said was often more interesting than what was said, and mainly because they made me laugh.
Yes.
But I'd never seen them perform a lot of these short plays that I read at the time. So just to meet him, and it was the start of a working relationship that went on for another 10 years.
Yes.
With the caretaker and no man.
Yes.
He was involved in every production of Pinter that I did after that. And
yes, I remember your patriarch very vividly in The Homecoming, David, and the nastiest, most frightening part I've ever seen you play, but wonderfully effective. I mean, is it, without getting sort of too congratulatory about the National, but do you feel as actors working at the National, you're working with the best? Do you get the sort of looked after properly? Do you get, you know, production values are high? Do you feel that you can give off your best because you're looked after by the National, or?
And
Being
you
recorded
get
day.
nights off as well.
Yes, exactly,
So
even better.
You're working in repertoire. It's not like doing a year's run in the West End where you can go a little bit on automatic if you're not careful. They're constantly being refreshed by, especially if you're doing a couple of shows and in tandem, they just keep fresh, as I say. And and you do feel as though the backup system here is amazing, and the fact everybody's in the same canteen and the chips are good, you know, what's it like?
What more do you want?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I quite agree with that. I think it's
You
like
don't like
any...
the chips?
No, I love the chips. I think it depends on the show, you know. I mean, I've had fantastic experiences here, and I've had less than fantastic experiences here, to be honest. I mean, I think that... I think the National Theatre is too big. I think when you're here, you bump into other actors in the canteen who are doing different shows, but I think you create your community around the show you're doing very often, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you think? And you bump into other people you know in other shows, which is really lovely. But I think so. The community that builds around a production is either very happy or not so happy. And I've had lots of wonderful experiences here, but I don't think you're guaranteed to have a great experience. To be honest,
Yes.
I mean, I think it just depends.
No.
And I've had I don't think it's necessarily, a given that you're going to have a fantastic experience, but I think there is something. I was coming here tonight, I was driving over the river, over Waterloo Bridge, and I love that view of the South Bank, and I looked at this building, thought, I'm walking in here tonight and thinking, I feel very possessive about it. I suppose, what is it that working here is different to working anywhere else in the country or in the world, really? And I suppose I feel it is like coming home a bit. I mean, it's like it's a community. And when you're in it, when you're working here, you do feel very, very much you're sort of in a fold, as it were. I always have. And then when you're not, you feel that you're not quite, you're out in the world, but everything's much more transitory. Whereas here, there is a sort of permanence. The same people have worked here in different departments, decade in and decade out. And there's nowhere else in the profession where that's the case, possibly Stratford. But otherwise, everything's always new, and you're always leaving it behind after a couple of months or something. But here, there is you come in the same door that you came in when you were 20, and the same people very often are there to greet you all. So different times in your life, you come back and you measure yourself against that permanence, and that's a sort of remarkable thing about. And a pride about it as well. But,
now, we've talked about performances that you did see. What about performances that you didn't see but rather wish you had seen, had you been able? Juliet, do you want to?
I didn't fill that one in, is it?
Let's have a look, I'll tell you. Well, you sort of... too many to choose from, which is a bit... would pick Laurence Olivier's production of The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which is interesting.
Did I say that? Oh,
With
right.
the stupendous Colin Blakely playing John Proctor.
Yeah.
Tell us, I mean, Colin's sadly left us much too early, what 20 years ago now. I mean, I thought he was a fascinating actor. What do you remember about that? Or what did you hear about? Because you didn't see the production. What did you hear about it on the street?
I didn't hear anything about it. I just...
Because you would be just a wee thing when you were...
Yeah, I mean, I can't often say things were before my time anymore, but it's very, very, very nice to be able to say that. But it was before my time. But I was a massive fan of Colin Blakely's, and yes, I mean, I suppose he was one of my great heroes when I was, coming into the profession. I never worked with him.
No.
And of course, he died far, far too young.
Yes, sort of mid-80s sometime, I think it was.
Oh, I think he was one of those actors, a bit like Corinne Redgrave, another magnificent actor. Perhaps these are both two actors who haven't been quite sung enough, who I just think you could not see any cogs working at all, You just couldn't tell the difference between... Yeah. They just seem to live and breathe and inhabit the characters so completely that you just couldn't see anything else other than that immersion. Wouldn't you say about Colin?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you work with him?
No, but I saw him do several things. Well, Royal Hunt, I saw him do Titus Andronicus of Stratford. But he was just so... I mean, he looked like a builder, didn't he?
Yes, he was very unactory, wasn't he? He was really like the proverbial brick. What's it?
Irish brogue.
That's one of the things I loved about him, actually.
Very earthy and,
Not
I never saw that.
highfalutin at all. Now, what about the ones that you've nominated? They're very interesting case in point. But you must have heard it. We all heard about it, but
Yeah.
few of us saw it. Would you like to share that with us,
Yes,
David?
well, it was Ian Charleson's Hamlet.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew Ian. Well, we did, didn't
Yeah,
we?
yeah, yeah.
We worked with him at Stratford.
Yeah.
And absolutely terrific guy. And I for some reason, I didn't know how ill he was at the time, because I think, but he was playing Hamlet right up until his death.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, I did see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's one of those regrets, you know. that
Yes.
I wish I'd seen Ian do that, you know, because I spent a few months with him in the West End on Once in a Lifetime.
Yes.
That Trevor directed as well. So I'm glad he's honoured in the Ian Charleson Awards once a year, which
Yes.
we usually come to, and it's a nice. It's always a nice gathering, and it's nice that he's remembered with an award in his name.
Yes.
Quite rightly.
No, Juliet, so did you know how ill he was when
Well,
you
do you
saw
know,
that production?
I'm not sure I should tell this story, but I'm going to, since we're talking about him, because I knew him. I knew him and loved him like most people. He was at Stratford when I first arrived at Stratford. We were there together. My first year of working, I was 20, and I know we're not supposed to talk about the RSC, but Ian was there, and he was that joyous. I mean, everybody loved him. He was charismatic, beautiful, funny, anarchic, political, just delicious, wonderful, wonderful human being. And then AIDS started to arrive. The first murmurs about this terrible virus started to sort of hit this country, and Ian was one of the first people who got ill, but we didn't really understand what it was. This was, I suppose, the early 80s, and nobody had a real understanding of just how terrifying this was going to be. And then we were in the company here together. We weren't in the same show, but I remember being on the first floor outside the canteen in the green room. There's a sort of hall, and the lifts up to other floors are off this. And I remember I got into a lift, and the doors were open, and I saw Ian coming out of the green room. And I said, hi. And he went, hello. And I said, Ian, how are you? Are you all right? Because I naively sort of thought. And he said, they say I'm going to die. Isn't that crazy? And he laughed. And I said, what? And the lift doors shut. And the lift doors shut, and I went down, and I went, what did he just say? What did he just say? You know, I couldn't, he must have been joking, because he had such an amazing sense of humour. But the most extraordinary exchange, and I remember it as though it was yesterday. Well, you would remember.
Yeah.
And I suppose he was processing something. And that was, as you say, shortly after that, then Daniel Day-Lewis left that production of Hamlet, and Richard Eyre had this brilliant idea of giving it to Ian to take over.
Yeah.
But it was just such an extraordinary exchange, and you know, most of these exchanges in this building are sort of camp, and you know, and I thought maybe he's just laughing, maybe he's not serious, but of course then shortly afterwards I realised he was.
Well, God rest him. God rest him. Now, let's have a look at our next question. Oh, right. Fancy dress party. I don't know if this is your thing, David. Which NT costume, your own or someone else's, would you wear? And for fun, let's not be gender specific.
Pass. The idea of a fancy dress party fills me with horror.
Yes.
I mean, my own brother goes to murder mystery weekends up in Keighley in Yorkshire, and I think the idea of just dressing up for a weekend and or putting a fancy dress, we spend most of our lives doing it. So,
Exactly.
Yes.
So
So it says here you're thinking about it, David, but I think you've probably come to
all
a
right.
conclusion.
Well, for some reason, all I could think of was Dinah Riggs' dress in jumpers. That'll have to do.
What, you want to wear it, or you just just like Dame Diana wearing it at the time? I'm sure it suited her beautifully.
Yeah, for the right kind of occasion.
Well, I can't wait.
This is me.
I can't wait to see that. Now, you mentioned the costumes you had when you were playing in Private Lives.
Well, I agree with David. This question, I wasn't really interested in this question because I agree exactly the same as David. You know, we spend all our time in fancy dress, so my idea of fun is to wear a pair of shorts and a pair of flip-flops. But I did have fabulous costumes in Private Lives, and they were heaven. And when you put them on, you just feel that you've got to behave badly, you know. And as Amanda, so I did love those. And then I remembered feeling the only costumes I really envied was coming to see that wonderful production of Wind in the Willows and thinking, I am Mole. No, I am Rat. No, I am Toad. You know, and thinking, I should be playing all those roles. I'd love to be wearing all those costumes.
Right. Oh, well, maybe we shall see that one day, the sort of...
An all-female.
We've had an all-female Julius Caesar, why not Wind in the Willows as
Yeah.
well? Now, your favourite spot, because you sort of mentioned that a moment ago, in the National. What is your favourite, or perhaps secret spot in the National Theatre, on the South Bank, or perhaps elsewhere? Now, which is your favourite, Juliet? Shall we start with you?
Oh, I love that balcony outside the canteen, where we used to go and smoke when we smoked. But now, you know, you can have lunch and then go and gaze at the river. I've just always loved the fact that this building's by the water and by the river, which is a sort of incredible artery that runs through the city, and you can see the whole city from there, and it gives you kind of wonderful sense of what the theatre's for and who you're doing it for and being part of this extraordinary city. And then you go into your little dark dressing rooms and theatre spaces, but you've got this amazing vista outside the window, which sort of brings everything back into perspective. So I love that balcony.
I think a few years ago they banned smoking out on the balcony, didn't they?
Did they?
But they had to wait until Gambon had left after the Henrys, because they knew he'd take no notice.
Yes, well, exactly, yes. I've seen a few people take drags out there,
maybe
but
they brought it back.
maybe, yes, because they have to go somewhere, the dreadful smokers, don't you? Now, your favourite place, I'm making no conclusions here, David, is part of the bar or bar area somewhere?
Well, the far corner.
The far corner
You
of
come
which
in
bar?
The doors on the far corner, because you can see who's coming in, who's going out. And after a show, and you're there, and you just get a grand view of all people, mates after a show, or
Right.
friends of friends, or whatever.
Is this in the long bar, you mean, or the bar in the green room?
Oh, I haven't been here for a while. I just know the bar at the top of the stairs, where the lift, that lift space.
Oh, right, yes, so the green room, in other words, presumably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a canteen to that. and
That's
there's a
right.
green room, yeah.
Well, I think they call the canteen the blue room now as well, which is interesting.
All right.
Anyway, that's your favourite secret spots. Let's have now this is a very interesting, there's very ingenious people putting this together. You have a morning, matinee and evening slot to fill with your 3 absolute favourite productions from the entire history of the National. You could have been in it, written it, directed it. It could be a new play or a revival. You could choose them because of a particular performance, or they could be for entirely personal reasons. They could be something you saw that you loved and moved and changed you, or something you never saw but wish you had. So, let's begin. It's a pretty long evening, isn't it? David, why don't you take us through your day at the National, your morning performance?
Well, I've deliberately picked 3 shows that I didn't see, because when you're left with memories of a show you particularly loved, whether it's Well Hunted the Sun or whatever, I like to retain that memory. I have a right to do that, to keep it as I remember it. And if I saw it again, I might realise it was a creaky old play anyway, or whatever. But I've chosen for in no particular order, but I thought maybe for the morning, the Uncle Vanya with Olivier and Redgrave, which was at the Old Vic in 63.
Well, it started at Chichester, didn't it?
Yes, apparently, yes, that's right. But I never.
You didn't. That wasn't during your visit to Chichester. It wasn't on there, and it came up.
The year before, I think.
That's
it was
right.
the inaugural year,
That's right.
And I would love to have seen that dearly. And the production of View from the Bridge with Gambon playing Eddie Carbone. I wish I'd seen that, because he's one of my favourite guys, favourite actors, anything. And finish off the evening with Richard Eyre's Guys and Dolls.
Right.
Get me back onto the 73 bus and home.
Sitting down, you're rocking the bus. Now, you did see that one then, guys?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Oh,
no,
right.
No.
How could you possibly have missed it?
I know.
Because that comes up again in your notes, Sergeant. Now, what would you like to start with? Something rather demanding, anyway, the morning session.
Well, I didn't know how to answer this. I mean, it's kind of a wonderfully impossible question, isn't it? But this wouldn't be anybody's idea of a real day. It would be a nightmare, about 19 hours of theatre. But, I think I finished, yes, I started the day with, I put this in because I just wanted to, for the sake of perhaps you know, another unsung hero. Well, he's not. But Tony Harrison's production of The Trackers of Oxyrhynchus, which I don't know, did anybody see that?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
You did.
There was a few noddings.
We took it to Delphi.
Yes.
I think it's the only thing I put in which I was in, but I was only a tiny bit in it. But I didn't. It was the most extraordinary piece of work. Did you think? I mean,
You did it in Delphi?
Yeah, we took it to Delphi,
Wow.
and we performed it in the middle of the night in that
Wow.
theatre space on that mountain. And Jocelyn Herbert, the wonderful, wonderful Jocelyn Herbert's design, and she put the set up during the evening, and during the nights before we got up there, the day before, she put the set up the day before, and there was an almighty sort of midsummer storm, and the whole thing was wrecked. It was an amazing set. She spent days and days putting it up. And we all walked up early in the morning in this boiling heat, you know, and this whole set had been sort of semi-trashed by the wind and the storm. And I went, God, this is terrible. And Tony went, it's fantastic, you know. Of course, you know, because he was so excited by the idea of the storm, and the gods had intervened, and we'd do this show on the trashed set, and in a way he turned a sort of, but it was a most amazing, phenomenal piece of writing. And there's a play created in verse. I mean, I think he's a sort of a genius,
yes,
and a great creative force in this country, and I don't think he has enough fuss made about him. And it was remarkable to be in that show. I think I was the only woman. 99 men and me. That wasn't pleasurable about it, but and it was first time. Yeah, I worked with Clive Rowe, who's so there's that one, and then I think I had Angels in America.
Angels in America, which we were talking earlier on. Tell us about it. Tony Kushner made a big impression. Was Daniel Craig in it?
No, isn't that embarrassing? I don't remember.
Somebody, I'm sure he was. There are certainly lots of people who've done very well since then.
He may have been, yeah, but there were different casts at different times. And again, it was, as I said earlier, Henry that I remember most vividly. But the play, really, the show, you know, which was, I mean, I suppose I do love shows that are, I love writing that's about the world we're living in now. I love that use of theatre. And it was just the most phenomenal canvas, wasn't it? I mean, incredible piece of bold, experimental, imaginative, daring, fallible writing, which is everything I love about new writing. And taking on something which was, you know, I don't know that anybody's written a play of that size since. So that was one of my great experiences here. And then I finished up with Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls. Did you see Guys and Dolls?
Yeah, I did, yeah. With Ian. I'm sure Ian played Sky Masterson.
He did, yes, in the first
and the wonderful Julie Covington sang Sarah, I think.
Hoskins was in there.
Hoskins,
yes, he was. Nathan.
Very young Clive Rowe, wasn't he in it? Or was he
was
in the remake?
No, he was in both. Clive was in both.
Was Billy in the first? Billy Patterson in the first production?
He was, yes, as Harry the Horse.
Harry the Horse. And Julia Mackenzie.
Yes.
Played Adelaide.
And then about 12 years later, Richard, just before he was leaving the National, he would give himself a leaving present by reviving the Guys. And Henry played Nathan, I remember, in that. And Imelda then, who'd understudied Julia, then took over as
and was equally wonderful,
It was a sort of, which we all dream about, and I suppose we all have sort of limited number of these experiences, but you really do leave the theatre walking on air, don't you?
Walking on air. I mean, it was perfect. I don't think you can often say that. I mean, I just think there was the critical faculties just evaporated, and you just thought they were just sort of consummately wonderful. And the sort of evening where, even though you are an actor, you just think, aren't they spectacular? How did anybody do that? You know.
I thought the cast was about 40 or 50 strong, and it turned out only 15 of them. The stage was permanently busy and occupied, wasn't it? Absolutely.
Well, and joy, you know, it was everybody. They just loved it, didn't they? And it was, you know, the joy that they were having doing it was so palpable.
I'm sorry about rubbing it in. Your sense of loss must be all the more
go on,
David. But there we are. Anyway, I could sit here all night. I mean, it's been just wonderful just to chat about some of these great memories and great productions here at the National, which we're celebrating in our 50th year. And I can't think of two nicer people to share this trip down memory lane with. And please join me in thanking Juliet Stevenson and David Bradley.